whatever we're doing in life, make it enjoyable and don't lose the pleasure because you're so focused on the process.
Welcome to the Unstoppables, where we turn your intention into dollars. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Donnica Moore. We'll call her Dr. Donnica. Dr. Donnica is most well known for her previous role as the women's health contributor for NBC's Later Today, appearing weekly from 1999 to 2000, covering diverse women's health issues. Very, very important. Previously, she was a frequent guest on NBC's Weekend Today show, and Dr. Donnica has appeared on more shows than I have.
Oh, yeah.
By a couple. You want to hear the number?
What's the number?
375 television interviews. Is that a typo?
Yeah, it is. It's supposed to be 875.
What?
But who's counting?
We got some work to do, Bill.
She's been on Oprah. She was on The View, Good Morning America, and I Am Jealous, CNN International. Okay, end of interview. Let's do another one. Who's the next one? Someone with a lower bar. Give me a low bar. Dr. Moore was raised in Brooklyn. I'm going to listen for your accent, okay?
Oh, gosh, I don't have one anymore.
Is it better pizza in New York or Chicago?
No, New York, hands down.
Yeah, that's
Anybody who asks that has not had New York pizza.
You watch what I do next. She graduated cum laude from Princeton University. Now, I'm really jealous because I'm also not. You got to help me with the intellect part. Together, we might get her IQ. With a double major. What was your major?
Biology and science and human affairs.
We'll let the human affairs go. Did you spend time in Dublin?
I did. I spent a year in Dublin at the University College of Dublin School of Medicine as a Rotary International Graduate Fellow.
Did you drink the Guinness?
I drank Harp, which is much more palatable, I think, to the American taste. But for a year after I left Ireland, I could not touch alcohol at all.
That was either one of two things. You either had copious use, I won't say abuse, over there because this is a health show. Your liver couldn't stand it, or your palate just blew out and you got accustomed to red meat.
My palate blew out, and I was a first-year medical student, so I had to be stone cold sober.
Yeah, you need the brain cells. You don't want to kill them off. You know,
I did.
I had a theory about brain cells, and he said it's like thinning the herd of buffalo. You need to lose some so the rest, survival of the strongest. That was one way to look at it. But here's my when I saw this, I was looking for similarity. Mm-hmm. Buffalo School of Medicine. That was in Buffalo, correct?
Uh-huh.
How did you like the snow?
What was amazing about it, talk about a lesson in resilience. The people in Buffalo, New York treat 3 feet of snow the same way we in New Jersey treat 3 inches of snow. And ironically, we are having a snow day today with 3 to 12 inches of snow predicted in New Jersey.
Well, okay. I grew up 2 hours from Buffalo in Western Pennsylvania. And I had relatives in Buffalo. So I know that it's all relative. Snow plows are just part of the scenery.
There was one day in 4 years that things were closed because of a snowstorm. And we had 5 feet of snow literally in 6 hours. But the reason things were closed was because it was complete whiteout conditions. And that was actually a real highlight of my medical school experience because I lived in a 2nd-story garden apartment and the police were sent to pick up all the medical students to bring us up to the hospital for reinforcements. And so I got to be picked up by a police cruiser with the lights flashing, and I had to exit out of the 2nd floor balcony and literally slide down the snowbank to get into the police car.
You had fun with that, didn't you?
That was a great day. The rest of the day was downhill.
and I think near Buffalo, it's Lackawanna, Hamburg. I always liked Hamburg. Okay, that was important to me. I had to get to Buffalo, Niagara Falls, which I like the people in Buffalo. They're good. They're
very good people. It's a big city, but with a really small town mentality, and people really look out for each other there.
Spicy and chicken wings, correct?
Absolutely.
Let me be really succinct. The key that for the first time, what we want to do is to bring something to the audience that they can take away and have not only an immediate application, but that has long range implications as well. So tell me what you do now.
What I do now is literally talk about medicine. I no longer see patients. I do media, I do education, I do the lecture circuit. I write about medicine, and my new venture, literally launched yesterday, is a new podcast called In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donnica. And the concept is to get women to talk about their really intimate, scary, stressful, embarrassing health issues that they don't really know who to ask. You know, who do you ask about bloating and gas and period problems and bladder problems? And these are acne, rashes. These are all things we wrestle with. And of course, since it's the new year, we're also going to be talking a lot about fitness and health. I also have a great concern about how many millions of Americans don't have health insurance or who can't afford their health insurance. And my message is that being healthy will save you a lot of money in the long term. And until Congress figures it out and until the policymakers figure it out, I want to talk to people about what you can do for yourself. So I'm all about self-empowerment. I'm all about starting each day as though it's a fresh start, and all about the importance of knowledge and information.
Because awareness, self-empowerment, that's a personal responsibility. That's obligation to the self.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be the tipping point.
Absolutely. I'm also about the women are about sisterhood and about community and about talking to each other. And where do we talk to each other more than in the ladies' room? Well, you wouldn't necessarily know this, but you've got to have wondered over the years what we do all that time that we spend in the ladies' room. We talk about things, and we talk about things with our best friends, but we also talk about things with total strangers. And that's the concept of this, is real conversations with real women about really intimate issues.
Really? Why do women do that? No, it's something you do. I'm going to paraphrase Viktor Frankl. You reminded me of something. If you find your why, you can endure any how.
Exactly.
So I want to go granular here. I'm going to be a reductionist. I'm going to come back to your why. What's the compelling reason behind the work you do as a champion of women's health?
Well, it actually came back to a book that influenced me very early on in my life called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And the thesis of that book was, if you can answer the why me question, you can move on. And when I was 11, I was diagnosed with a very serious spinal condition. And immediately, when the doctor gave me the diagnosis at 11 years old, I immediately went to, this will make me a better doctor. I don't know that I had ever thought about being a doctor before that day, but that day, that was my answer. And that has always been the answer to my why me question, is that any bad experiences I have, and I've had a lot of bad health experiences, it makes me more empathetic. It makes me a better communicator. It makes me a better doctor.
You have a mindset that seems to move toward that word that I love, resilience.
It's a very important word. And I actually read a book called Resilience once, and it was actually addressing the issue of being a parent and how resilience is the most important skill we can teach our children. But it's really the most important skill we can develop for ourselves. How much failure you have is not what matters. How you deal with it is what matters.
Right. I have a hard time with the word because I always framed it as a setback or something that I had to just overcome, or just something that was just part of the price of moving forward. I never really framed failure as something that had that kind of like it's an animate object that was weighing me down. No, it was something that I just moved through. It was just a matter of mindset.
Yeah, sometimes you can't get over it, but you can usually get through it.
What is your proudest achievement to date? Because I know you got a long way to go.
Well, that's really easy because I have 2 children. So I think if you ask most mothers, they will say that their proudest accomplishment is, are the people they gave birth to. And I'm really proud of them. My proudest professional accomplishment are probably all of the lives that I've been able to reach in either one-on-one or through television. I'll just tell you a quick anecdote. I was doing the Dr. Oz show one time, and we were talking about the early warning signs of ovarian cancer. And ovarian cancer has very subtle symptoms, and most women with ovarian cancer are not diagnosed till they're in the very end stage of the disease. Exactly 1 year later, they called me back to do another show on ovarian cancer, and it featured 5 women who were diagnosed with early ovarian cancer as a result of having seen the show 1 year later, and they were effectively cured. And that was just one of those professional moments that you can't even put into words how I'm getting goosebumps telling you about it. It was just a very moving experience.
My co-collaborator over here, collaborator, assistant, almost quasi-manager, that she's got goosebumps too.
Oh, that's great.
Let me ask you about the transition then. So how was the transition? How'd you make that transition from one-on-one, where there's a certain level of intimacy, to you're a public figure and you're blasting out and all you see is the cameras, the lights for 375 interviews?
875.
875.
But who's counting?
We'll leave that off for now.
You know, the transition was, as in many things in my life, I transitioned from practicing medicine to just talking about medicine because of a disaster. And that was, I had repeated more awful spinal problems. I wound up having to have major reconstructive spinal surgery and a year of rehab. And I was a resident at the time and I had terrible health insurance. So I took a corporate job so I could have good health insurance and a desk job. In that position, I became the spokesperson for the entire multi-billion-dollar international company on any product liability issues with respect to women's health. So when you have that job, you get a lot of media training. But fun fact, my very first television interview was when I was 15 years old. And the interviewer was Bill O'Reilly in Brooklyn, New York. And he was doing a thing on gifted children. And I was about to go to college. I'd just been accepted to Princeton. I was 15. Years and years later, when I was doing a thing at Fox News, I asked him if I reminded him of that. And he did not remember. And now I'm really glad.
I was going to just ask, how'd that make you feel? But I got it. I got it. Who were your mentors?
Oh gosh, my number one mentor, whose picture is literally hanging in my kitchen, was Dr. Philip Levine, who was my boss in my first medical job when I was in college. I had a summer internship working at Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute in New York. And Dr. Levine was 90 years old, and I was his research assistant. He was the guy who literally discovered Rh factors in blood. And this led to the discovery of RhoGAM, which allows millions and millions of children since then to be born healthy if they have an incompatibility with their mothers with Rh disease. And he essentially called himself my grandfather. I worked for him for 3 years. And the painting that's hanging in my kitchen is a copy. It's not an original, unfortunately. It was a Norman Rockwell portrait of him. He and Norman Rockwell were born the exact same day.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
You have it's a compelling obligation to share what you know about health to benefit others. You have that. I think it's your purpose. It's that compelling obligation. It has to just get out. You know, it's this awkward segue, but there's a writer, Charles Bukowski, and they said if he didn't get it out, the demons were so bad. You know, he was in the bottle, and he became a great writer because he was compelled to get it out. He had to just get it out and share things with others. How would you encourage someone who has that feel, that compelling pull, to take the first steps to share that obligation?
I think the first step is recognizing what your purpose is. And you know, many people struggle with that. And that is the subject of many books, many musicals. My favorite musical of all time, Pippin, is all about finding your place in the sky, finding your purpose. One of my other favorite musicals, Avenue Q. Can you tell I'm a theater mom?
No.
But everybody has, I think if you can identify your purpose, then you can act on it. So you can kind of work backwards.
Okay. It begs the question from some audience members who I'm also streaming on Instagram. How do people find their purpose? I have an answer on that. I'm just throwing this to you as an aside. It's a question that's an individual. It's a subjective question, but to me, I'll give you my answer first and then just throw it to you this way. I think it's a pull from purpose, something that you feel, something that you find as you're immersed in the work. Whatever that work is, whatever you're doing, it will find you and it pulls you forward. We search for it sometimes like we're in the dark without a flashlight. And I think we're searching too hard for it. We're overlooking those things that really are somewhat innate to us and somewhat they give us a certain bounce of belonging. But you tell me how you think people could find their purpose.
Well, I think I would answer it the way I answer a lot of questions. Is it all depends on everything. It all depends on who you are. It all depends on your life circumstances. It all depends on everything you've been exposed to in life. And the dirty little secret is you might not have just one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You might have multiple purposes, and you might have different purposes at different times in your life. So what I advise my own children, what I advise women I speak to, what I advise audiences is to listen. Sometimes when we're searching for something, what we really need to do is search within instead of looking without. And we need to be still and listen to that inner voice.
Big believer of what Socrates found at the Oracle of Delphi, which is know thyself. And I think that Shakespeare then took that, purloined that, and then said, "And to thine own self be true." But the first and the hardest thing to do, the foremost thing we have to do is look within, find out who we really are at our core. And I think you said something that I'm going to use, and I'll give you credit for this.
Thank you.
But when you find who you are, and you I think you create your life circumstances from there. You can't go back in past conditions, but you can, once you find who you are, create those present and then influence the future life circumstances. So I can create those. And I think that is the personal obligation. And that is a real message for us right there. What's next, Dr. Donnica? I got it, didn't I?
You did. I'm so proud of you.
I was working on that. I was on overload. I got it.
All my Irish ancestors would be proud of you. Well, what's next? I'm really focusing on the podcast, which I just launched. I'm having a lot of fun, sort of the same experience you must be having, interviewing great people. Thank you, like you. Thinking about the concept, thinking about the message, thinking about the topics, doing a lot of research, perusing people's books. I haven't finished a whole book yet, but it's a lot of fun. I'm sorry?
Link list. Link list. My assistant got it for me. You'll fly through stuff. And then you want, hey, is it any good? I think I'm going to go deeper. Blink list. I'm telling you.
Okay. I'm writing that down. That's a great tip.
How do we listen to your podcast?
You can look it up on iTunes. It's also on Libsyn. The name of it is In the Ladies Room with Dr. Donnica.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool.
It's of course linked on my Facebook page, on my Twitter, on my Instagram. All the ways we get out information these days.
What is your Instagram handle?
Dr. Donnica Moore.
Dr. Donnica Moore, and that's Donnica.
Right, and doctor is just Dr.
Thank you.
And no periods.
Thank you. Where can we find your book? You have a book, Women's Health for Life.
It's still available on Amazon, but it's actually out of print, and I'm currently in negotiations with the publisher to do a second edition. So that will also be on the what's next list.
I think you've answered this, but I'm going to throw it to you again, because this is the question that will stop most guests and make them really think and stretch them. What was, if you could only pick one, you can't do three. What was your defining moment?
Yeah, that's can I be really profound and say, I hope I haven't had it yet? That it's yet to come?
That'd be a new one.
I don't think that I'm fully formed and fully developed and fully accomplished yet. So I would like to think it's in the future. If you forced me to pick one from my past, I probably would have said that it was when I was 11 in that doctor's office and decided that I was going to be a doctor, and decided that the reason for the medical challenges that I had to go through was so that I could help others. That was very transformative.
I don't think anyone forces you to do anything. And I think we're always under construction as people. I think that if you're not, it's all about evolution to me. And it's all about change, adaptation to change. And I'm always thinking next. And I'm always moving that way. And I think that's a whole physical, spiritual, emotional, level of connectivity I have. And when I'm getting things thrown at me. I hear you're a Clemson Tiger fan. Is that true?
No, Princeton Tigers. Oh my gosh.
But Princeton is a different school. That one, yeah.
Nothing against Clemson.
I was thinking about it. I thought you wanted to go with a winning program, but she went with the yeah.
No, I'm a Princeton Tiger.
An attorney friend of mine went to Princeton. He is very erudite, so I'm very careful with him. We just had strike three on that. How do you?
We're very factually oriented at Princeton.
You are, and I'm just always living in the gray.
I once made a mistake, a very small mistake.
Once.
in an interview on television. And I'm still like beating myself up over it. And it was the most minor thing.
Yeah.
But we constantly fact checked ourselves when we were
Oh,
Princetonians.
It's self-flagellation because
I'm good at that.
So I got a real sharp whip. How do you define success? I can just keep you on, just asking you questions.
I'm so glad that's my favorite question. And actually that was another defining moment. When I was a senior in college, I lived in a dorm with a lot of freshmen. And so I used to post all these quotes and cartoons and things on the wall in the hall. And one of the quotes became my senior yearbook quote. And it's still my favorite. And it's literally on the wall behind my desk, so I can read it to you. It's to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. And that is essentially the mantra of my life and the essence of what I try to aspire to every day.
Did you read that? Do you have that memorized?
No, I read it. It's literally on the wall behind my computer.
Who is that? Is that Emerson?
Well, this is an interesting story. For decades, I thought it was a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, and I attribute it to him in my yearbook. Most people attribute it to Ralph Waldo Emerson, but it turns out it was actually written by a woman named Bessie Stanley. She won a contest by her local newspaper in Kansas that was about writing an essay, maximum 150 words, what it means to have succeeded. And I don't know how, and I haven't been able to Google it to find out. I don't know how it got attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who died many years before she even wrote that.
Because we steal the credit.
Yeah, we do.
Kelsey does. Well, men do.
We can't blame him because he was dead.
No, he was dead. Somebody said, well, we got to get some credibility on this.
His fans. And there's posters with that on and attributing it to him.
I thought it was Emerson. That's who I thought it was too. So,
yeah. But that is sort of the essence of what I believe success is.
There is a ton of noise out there. A ton of noise. And everybody's talking about health. And it's one of the most confusing things for people's health. You know, how to read a label.
Who knew it was so complicated?
Really? Why should people, especially women, connect with you over all the other shit, the noise that's out there, how they separate the wheat from the chaff, how they separate the brilliance, your seminal brilliance, your true brilliance from the rest of the stuff that's out there?
Well, first of all, I think there's lots of good stuff out there too. And I don't claim to be the only good voice or the only good stuff or the only accurate information. Mm-hmm. I do think we are in a situation with the internet where the information superhighway has become the too much information superhighway.
Right.
And especially with respect to health, I think there's two groups of people. One group of people has heard too much about diet and exercise, for example, and they just tune out and they're just like not interested anymore. Right. The other group thinks they have every disease and every disorder that they ever read about. So I think that the attraction for listening to me, and I hope there is an attraction, is that I'm pretty straightforward and I like to think I keep it real. I also like to think that I'm pretty moderate. I don't have a position that there's one thing that's right for everybody, except there's only one issue in all of medicine that's right for everybody, and that is nobody should smoke. Everything else is entirely negotiable depending on the situation. There's no one medicine that's good for everybody. Even having too much oxygen can be bad for you in certain circumstances. So, or having too much water can be fatal in certain circumstances. So everything is negotiable. And I like to think that's what's good about my message is that I address that. I admit it. My greatest strength, I think, is I admit what I don't know. And I think the greatest value that I can have for other people is helping them formulate not only the questions to ask their doctors, but what kind of doctors to see for what kinds of issues.
Do you know how when people are listening, the difference between listening and hearing is that I'm listening to you, but then I got stuck on something and I stopped listening and I started hearing. I'll tell you what I listened to.
Okay.
Too much water can be fatal. I'm drowning in that thought. Tell me how it can be fatal.
So you can actually overhydrate in an extreme circumstance. The people who have died from drinking too much water have very infamously been in those drinking contests where some radio station will sponsor. I don't think they do it anymore because of this, but in the old days, somebody would sponsor a contest saying who could drink the most water in an hour. And you can actually get what's called hyponatremia, which is where the sodium in your bloodstream is too low, and that can be fatal. Your body really likes very accurate levels of electrolytes. So that includes sodium, calcium, magnesium, et cetera. And there's a very narrow margin. But I'm not talking about people who are constantly with their water bottle through the day. I'm talking about people who try to chug 12 gallons of water in an hour.
I'm an advocate of Pedialyte to get that imbalance back after certain nights out.
I'm an advocate of drinking a full glass of water for every alcoholic beverage during the nights out.
It slows me down. That's all about homeostasis, right? Balance, man.
And then it makes you have to go to the restroom, and then we're back to my stomping grounds.
I just wonder what you and I could do over a bottle of wine. Anyway, we'll let that one go for now. But if you could punch out one or two important takeaways for women as we wrap this up, what would you say to women today, the two most important things to do, or the two most important things to think about in terms of their health?
Well, of course, number one is I would like them to tune in and subscribe to my podcast, In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donnica, now available on iTunes and other places where podcasts are available. But in all seriousness, I think the number one thing that women need to do is to put themselves as much higher on their to-do list. Ideally, I would like them to put themselves as number one on their to-do list, but being a woman and being a mother, I know how difficult that is. So I'll just accept higher on your to-do list. The number two thing is to really pay attention, or to pay as good attention to your physical maintenance as you do to your car maintenance. All right, we have a sticker on the car that says when we have to get it inspected. We have a light that goes on that says when we need an oil change. We have a fuel gauge that says when we need to get more gas. We don't have those things for a body or for our bodies and our own physical maintenance and well-being. And I would like women to kind of think about how they can calibrate that and make that happen. One of the tips I recommend is using your birthday. So what I do is I schedule my mammogram. I don't schedule it for my birthday, but on my birthday, I make the phone call to schedule my mammogram. I make the phone call to schedule my annual GYN exam, my annual dermatology exam, and my annual internist exam. That's like my birthday gift to me. Then I eat cake.
Then I eat cake. You staying with that simile about gas, or metaphor about gas, it's the same kind of fuel intake. You think about what you'd put in your Ferrari, your Maserati, or your fleet of right? And you think, would you put that into your body? And so we put so much sugar, so much crap in our body, we don't even think about it. We wouldn't put that kind of fuel into our cars.
Well, I sat in on a self-defense class that my daughter took a few years ago, and the instructor was a world jiu-jitsu champion. And she gave like a 15-minute talk before she began the actual self-defense maneuvers. And the first sentence of her self-defense talk was, self-defense begins with everything you put in your body, everything you eat and everything you drink. And I just thought that was so profound. The other thing that I've been using as a mantra lately, because I've gotten much better at paying attention to my exercise needs than I was for 20 years or so. But my new mantra is, you can't out-train a bad diet.
That's true. People ask me about that in workouts and training. I will tell you it's about 85%, if I'm going to get it right, diet and 15% workouts. The diet. Absolutely. If everybody wants to see their abs, so they're doing 1,000 crunches, wrong.
Yeah.
But it is diet driven, and I don't want to say diet. We'll say it's the way. It's a way of life for me. So
well, the way I work out on the elliptical, I have to do 30 minutes to burn 300 calories. That's 2 cookies. That really puts it all in perspective.
One harp. So that's just how that goes. She is Dr. Donnica Moore, and I tell you, I have loved having you on here.
Well, thank you. Likewise, it's been a pleasure.
875 interviews, or 865 more than me. I am jealous, but I have a high bar to try to jump over. So
it's not a competition.
It is.
No, it's not. It's a journey. It's a process. And I think most importantly, if I was going to leave people with one message, is it's supposed to be fun. Yeah. Whatever we're doing in life, make it enjoyable and don't lose the pleasure because you're so focused on the process.
I think we're going to start with that as the lead because I think we just got it. I think so many people think of the word work and there's almost a yoke of expectation that it has to be some grueling endeavor, some mundane exercise, as opposed to having fun. When did we lose our fun? On the playground? I mean, fun. This to me.
Middle school.
Well, to me, this is fun.
This is fun. And I actually have 5 principles for every business thing that I do. The first is it has to have something to do with why I became a doctor in the first place. The second is it has to have something to do with women's health. It doesn't have to be exclusively about women's health, but even when I talk about prostate cancer, I'm talking about the role women have in getting their men to get their butts to the doctor. Number 3, it has to be with good people. I'm just done with working with people who suck my blood or drain my energy. Number 4.
The ones that make you exsanguine. That's the only medical term I know.
Exsanguinate, it's a great term.
You have to use it.
The 4th rule that I have, it has to either be lucrative or pro bono. And I do a lot of pro bono work, but it has to be one or the other. And the 5th is, and probably the most important, it has to be fun.
Yes.
And those are the 5 rules that I set in 1997 when I started my business. And I stick to that every day.
We're going to copy those, okay, Kelsey?
Yeah, I was thinking the why, the what,
especially
the how,
those,
and the fun.
I like we're going to put fun number 1.
Okay.
Lucrative pro bono, we're just going to circle heavily on the lucrative. In the middle, we're not taking the median anymore. The Princeton Tiger, Donnica Moore, you were fantastic. I am going to blast you all over the place, and I want you to come back. And I would love sometime to have a tape recorder and a bottle of wine and just try to pick some parts of your brain. Wow, you're fantastic.
It's a scary place in there.
I love that labyrinth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
Great. Talk soon.